Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm talking about Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. It's going to be happening from February 17th until March, whatever it is. I have it there. And this is going to be in the sign of Aquarius, and it's going to, really show a time to reflect on what we are thinking and organizing, especially socially, culturally. I'm going to get into that and how to really analyze and evaluate retrograde planets, including Mercury retrograde, beyond all of the drama. You want to go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to get updated on these notifications. So that you can see when I go live, if you want to be notified, and just when I release a new video, whether it's live or not. So retrograde planets are very interesting. They're often very misunderstood. And especially it's one of those things where Vedic and Western astrology really sees them differently. Because in Vedic astrology, retrograde planets are considered to have a certain strength, what's called Chestabala, which means that they're slower. And it also means they're closer to the Earth. When planets are retrograde, they're closer to the Earth. So they have a certain strength, but it's a strength that's sort of backing up. It's an internal strength that tends to disrupt our external life. This is the nature of retrograde planets in general. Again, in Western astrology, it's much more simplistic. It's, bad, retrograde, it's bad, Mercury retrograde, bad. All planets that are retrograde, they're doing something bad, or it's considered to be a negative. It's definitely considered to be, I would say, tricky and perhaps bad in a very simple sense in the Indian way of seeing it, but it's also a real strength because, again, the planet is closer to the Earth. It creates an inner awareness and an inner strength, which I'll explain. But I also wanted to, before I dive into that as well, that sort of conceptual difference, I also wanted to let you know that I have done a very important masterclass on retrograde planets years ago, a couple of years ago, it wasn't that long ago. The most comprehensive class on retrograde planets that I've ever seen. What I do is I break down every retrograde planet for every sign, because they're totally different. If you've watched my channel at all or gotten any of my classes, you know that rulerships are in many ways the most important factor in understanding the specifics of what makes anything happen astrologically. It's very easy to just say, well, is it good or bad? And I don't know if it's good or bad because I don't know what the planets rule. I don't know what house that falls in. All of those nuances are the real thing that makes for a deeper wisdom. So in this Mercury retrograde class, this retrograde planets master course, first of all, you can get a really great discount. It's about 10 hours. It's usually $97, but you can get a discount if you go there to that link. But in this advanced course, you learn each retrograde planet for each ascending sign. So you'll understand how Mercury retrograde is for an Aries person, where it rules the 3rd and the 6th houses. You'll see how that's different. If it's Mercury retrograde for Capricorn, Mercury rules the 6th and the 9th house. Totally different planet. So again, you have to understand these rulerships. And then we also discuss the house placement of the retrograde planet. Like, for example, where Aquarius is, because this retrograde is happening in Aquarius. So again, if you're an Aries person, it's the 3rd and 6th house ruler retrograde in the 11th house. What does that mean? Again, if you're Capricorn, it's the 6th and 9th house ruler retrograde in the 2nd. What does that mean? Again, so this is how you can really understand in general the auspiciousness or difficulty of any retrograde planet. Now, I just did Mercury, but of course, all the planets go retrograde. And so again, that course, I'll pop the link in there again. If you click there, it's a discount. It's about 10 hours of classes. It's usually $97, but you can get 33% discount if you wanted to get that now. It's a really good deal. Of course, there's always a there's always a guarantee and whatnot if you think it's not worth it or whatever. But most people, I hardly have anyone have ever asked for the money back. So check it out if you want to learn more about retrograde planets beyond just, well, is it good or bad? What does it mean to me? I have it, you know. It's not that complicated. It's just a little deeper level. You know, this is the thing about learning astrology. If you're willing to actually just go a little bit deeper, and again, instead of just getting distracted by 15,000 other videos, if you're willing to just go a little deeper than the, than the typical, is it good or bad? What does it mean for me kind of thing? Then that's where you get all of the payoff, because all the payoff comes in just understanding a few of these deeper structures. And it's not even really that hard to do it. So this is why I offer these courses, right? I just focused on that retrograde. If you're just willing to say, okay, it's these rulerships and it goes there, and you're willing to think in a couple different steps and dedicate the headspace to learning it, everything opens up for you. And it's really not as hard as you think. So with that being said, let's dive into this. Let me go to the, so yeah, Mercury turns retrograde on the, on the 17th, I think it was, right? 17th. Yes. This is the end of the 16th. So on the 17th and the 16th, and then March, I think it was 10th. Yeah, March 10th. So you can see it's in Aquarius, right? And Aquarius is the sign ruled by Saturn. And Aquarius is literally about our social obligations. It's where we're trying to really do something good for the world, where we're really trying to universalize our personal identity. So Aquarius is opposite Leo, of course. Leo is the glory of the individual, or even you would say like the king. And Aquarius is the citizens, let's say, of the kingdom. So yes, you're a very powerful person. You're a very powerful being, and you're very aware of your power. But that power, but you want to share that power with the people in your life, with the individuals around you. And that's how the kingdom, or the king of Leo, has a kingdom of people in it. So Aquarius is literally your attempts and your desire to not be the center of attention all the time, or to not be the focal point, to actually be one of the good citizens in your own life. And how good it feels to be seen as a good citizen, not just a good citizen, like by society, but like within your family. Feels good if you're a father to be seen in your group as a good father, or at work, the culture at work to be not just liked, but respected and honored. And again, these attributes, in this sense of dignity, in this sense of elevated stature and status, is something that the soul learns after asserting yourself and after asserting your own individuality and saying, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I'm not going to be pushed around. And we go through that. Then once we establish our own sense of dignity and power, again, we want to universalize that so that it becomes shared with the world and everyone can benefit from it. So this is why Aquarius has a lot of those themes of, for example, things like politics and culture and larger causes that you want to service. Like what I'm doing right now could be seen as an Aquarius thing, right? I'm sharing with the world to try to make the world a better place. There might be a lot of motivations why I do this, but part of it is definitely to just try to help. We all just want to help in our own simple way. In some ways, it's the best game in town, is to just know that what you're doing is valuable to others. It feels bad when we want to share something and then it comes back to us from others in a way that is rejected. And in many ways, our social approval and our social standing is one of the deepest motivators. And one of the deepest fears that we have is of being rejected by the tribe or by the herd or by the culture. Because on some level, on a very deep level, on that very tamasic kind of reptilian, mammalian brain level, we want to be accepted by the group, because if not, if we're ostracized, we might be killed by the herd, or we might just be ostracized and then we don't get any food, or we don't get any, we don't have any connections. It's a very deep instinctive thing to want to belong. And Aquarius is really that sense of belonging that we have through good works and through doing things that align with a larger social network, social structure. Not so much in our personal family, not so much in our little tribe, like the family we were born in and that sort of comfort zone, but on a higher level. And as such, Aquarius is also, it can be quite ambitious. It's where we, again, want to show up and make the world a better place. We want to make a commitment to things that are going to outlive us, where we're willing to sacrifice for things that are going to be, bigger than just our own small life. Again, it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is the planet of commitment, duty, hard work, service. And in Aquarius, we make that commitment to ideas that outlive us. And again, those ideas take the form of, again, things like politics or social causes. For example, we live in a world now where most of us with 2 brain cells to rub together understand that there's man-made climate change that's affecting all facets of life. And by the way, if you disagree with that, I'm sorry, but maybe I was just a little insulting, but the jury is really in. And man-made climate change is a real thing, releasing CFCs and toxins into the air have created greenhouse effects and other things that have radically shifted climate. And finding solutions to those things, for example, is something that we can see collectively that we're trying to unite around. It's not necessarily the politics of this country or another one. It's a larger cause. So people who would show up to try to sacrifice their happiness or their life even for something bigger, that's a very Aquarius thing in the highest sense. In a more mundane sense, it's just wanting to be respected in the midst of groups. And also just the realization, once we get in a group, that we're not as powerful as we thought. So this is why the sign of Aquarius also naturally has a lot of humility built into it, right? Has a lot of humility built into it, because when we're in our Leo nature, Leo is where we feel powerful. I'm the king, I'm powerful. But Aquarius is where it's like having kings around a bunch of other kings, and I'm just as powerful as everybody else. So when we get in the group, when we get in the herd or in the culture or in the society, we get swallowed up by the masses of people, and we realize we're just another person. We're just another being. And hopefully we can feel that with humility. We can feel that without losing our authentic, powerful self as well. We don't feel like just because we're in a group now, we're no longer powerful. So this is the conundrum of the Leo-Aquarius axis. Every axis has this kind of extreme. Aquarius Leo goes through the extreme of I'm the most powerful one to I'm no more powerful than anyone else, and trying to maintain that balance between those two things. So Mercury, of course, going retrograde here in Aquarius is going to bring up a lot of these themes. And of course, we live in a world now where we have a lot of need for service, higher cause, and things like that. So I use the South Indian chart. I use South Indian chart because it's an astronomically correct chart. And the reason I use it is because this is literally the sky surrounding the Earth. The Earth is in the middle, and this is the sky surrounding the Earth. Whereas the diamond chart is just a house chart that is kind of like training wheels. So I recommend people transition to the South Indian chart immediately if you want to really learn well. I think it's definitely the best chart to learn on. Just a little aside because someone asked. So back to the point is that Mercury is that, again, that planet of communication, discrimination, flexibility, humor, not being so locked into our beliefs and fanatical ideas, but instead where we move with more curiosity and flexibility and communication, where we're interested in making adjustments and we enjoy engagement and we enjoy interaction. Mercury is quite powerful in Aquarius because Aquarius is an air sign and Mercury also rules an air sign. 1 second. And so this is quite an auspicious retrograde for the Mercury and the Aquarius areas of life. So, you know, the reason Mercury and all planets are powerful when they're retrograde, as I said, is because they're closer to the Earth. And this closeness to the Earth actually shows how, and the fact that it's moving backwards relative to its, you know, relative to the speed of the Earth. So the Earth is moving forward and the other planets are moving forward, but the planet that, excuse me, appears to be moving retrograde is appears to be moving backward. And again, it's an apparent motion. It's not really moving backward. It's just that the speed of the planet isn't keeping up with the speed of life on Earth. It appears to be going backward. So what that means is that because our life is moving forward, and it's moving forward at a specific clip, the retrograde planet and what it represents gets stuck. It gets blocked. It goes backwards. It gets obstructed. But what that does is wake us up to something more internal. It wakes us up to the pure essence of whatever the planet is, and in this case, Mercury. So what Mercury retrograde does, and the reason it's good to be prepared for it, is because we can expect and we know it's coming. So you might notice some of the details in your life starting to screw up a little bit, getting on the verge. It's a good time to start cleaning up some things that might lead to a technical problem or a big miscommunication or something like that. I've been dealing with quite a few of those things in the last few days. I always start to prepare a little bit early. You know, this is going to be the 17th, so it's about 5 days away, 16th, 17th. And I've noticed some things. I had some big, you know, when you get, you know, some of the things that I do in my life, especially with my business, with my work, it's very Mercury intensive, especially with websites and payment processors and stuff that I have on the back end that run my business that are very Mercury, detail, communication oriented, it's a really good time to back up and pay attention to those things. Now, even if you're not doing something like that, where you have, you know, shippers and payment processors and websites and all that, even just in general with your email, your car, your whatever, the things that you use to communicate with the world, now is a good time to get those things in order, because what happens when it goes retrograde is one of the big things you'll notice is how dependent you are on all forms of communication. You'll notice how important communication is and all these details are. And again, this is one of the big sort of astrological kind of boogeymen is Mercury's retrograde. Again, it's very overstated, and the time before Mercury retrograde, like right now, is really the time to start upgrading, updating things. Like, for example, if you have a website and you use WordPress always has a new version, and you're like, oh, I'll update it. If you don't update it, you know, the reason they have those updates, many of them are security updates, because people can hack in and update it, or your plugins. Update your plugins, because the reason those plugins update is because a lot of it is hackers. They hack into your website through those plugins. Or I had to do a big upgrade on my server last week, and it was a kind of hairy update, you know, because it could have been a mess if it didn't go well, but it went fine. But I had to concentrate on it, and I knew Mercury retrograde's coming. And I'm like, I had a couple other some weird tech support things I'm dealing with here today, even, and some weird miscommunications the last few days. So again, it's better to do them now. But what they show is that vulnerability, and they show how dependent we are on communication. And this retrograde, what happens is it really gets your attention when planets go retrograde. That energy becomes an internal force. Like I said at the beginning, it really gets your attention and backs up in your mind and consciousness, so you really pay attention to it. Because if you're not paying attention to it, then, you know, what happens is we don't pay attention to these things, all these details where let's say our technical life is dependent on it. We're like, forget it, I'll forget it. What happens is the Mercury retrograde cycle, you'll see the thing now blow up and break and blow up in your face. Now it's going retrograde and saying, now do I have your attention? That's why you want to do it beforehand, because that's really the way the cycles work. And again, I just, I said it earlier that I have a course on retrograde planets that I did several years ago. And again, this is really, I just peel back the onion. It's like 10 hours of classes. I talk about how Mercury retrograde is different for each of the ascendants, right? Not just Mercury retrograde, all the retrograde planets, because the planets are house rulers. They have their unique nature. They also are retrograde in different places from each other. And again, it's usually $97 for like 10 hours, but you can get a special here, 33% off. And again, these planets by transit are also really important. And, it's watching where the planets are moving in the sky and their rulerships. So this deeper look and this deeper dive into the retrograde planets is really something that you can benefit from. And you can see here, I have this diagram that I made years ago. In this diagram, all the planets would be retrograde, except the moon. You know, the moon never goes retrograde. But if the Earth is here, you see that Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, they're retrograde when they're outside of the Earth's orbit. They're retrograde when they're outside the Earth's orbit. They're closer to the Earth at that point. So they're really bright in the sky when planets are retrograde. They're closest to the Earth. When they're over here, they're what's called combust, because then they're on the other side of the sun, and we're looking through the sun when they're combust, and they're as far away from the earth as possible. But when they're retrograde, they're as close to the earth as possible, including Mercury and Venus. When they go retrograde, they go like this, and they're closer to the earth, the inner planets. So again, they become retrograde and combust, but that's a different thing. And again, I explain all of this in the course that you can get. So again, it's really good. It's an excellent course. And if you really want to learn how retrograde planets work in general, how to evaluate all of them, and conceptually, I highly recommend it. The reason I was reminded of it again is I wanted to show you that diagram, because the one thing to understand about the retrograde planets as well is one thing that I just told you, and it's the fact that the planets get much bigger in the sky when they're retrograde, because they're much closer to the earth. See, one of the most important things about the Vedic astrology is it still retains a lot of that observational integrity of looking at the sky. You know, it's still practiced the way it was thousands of years ago. Vedic astrology is still learned from books that were written more than 1,000 years ago, and a culture that has maintained the integrity of the teachings. By the way, this is the reason why, you know, we don't get into pseudo debates about zodiacs and stuff. It's very clear, for example, the way they did it, the way it was practiced. We don't get into just making up a lot of stuff. It's still practiced exactly the way it was written in the texts. Now you bring the texts to life with your research and whatnot, but they clearly put an emphasis on the observation. And this is one of the reasons why the magnitude of the planet, which means how big it is in the sky at a given time, shows its importance. And it's one of the auspicious factors. It's one of the reasons why the planet is considered auspicious when it's retrograde. Because there are two factors in what are called Shadbala. Bala means strength, and Shadbala means the sevenfold. It's actually six, but it's sevenfold strength of evaluating planets. And there are two of the Shadbala factors that have to do with either brightness or speed. And speed and brightness are really kind of the same thing, because as the planet gets slower, it gets brighter. And the slowest it can go is backwards. So again, the planet is fastest and dimmest when it's furthest away from the Earth. It's slowest and brightest when it's closest to the Earth, and that's when it's retrograde. So again, think of what this means. It means when it's slowest and going backwards, it's going backwards into our mind and consciousness. So like I just explained, the external thing that the planet is trying to do gets interrupted. It gets interrupted externally, and that interruption means we have to focus on it internally. We have to be introspective and reflective to reconnect with that, to reconnect with that force. Okay, one second. And it has very high Chestabala at that point when it slows down, and when it goes retrograde, the Chestabala, or the brightness, the magnitude, is very high. But it creates a disruption because our life is moving forward. The retrograde planet is moving backward, but it's very bright, saying, here I am. Pay attention to me. And the way it gets our attention is by disrupting what we're hoping it's going to do in the world. For example, when Jupiter is retrograde, let's say when you were born, Jupiter was retrograde. Well, whatever it is that Jupiter produces gets disrupted as a house ruler and as a karaka, as an indicator. So what does Jupiter produce? It produces teachers and gurus. It produces children. And it produces things as a house ruler, whatever it rules. Like if it's for Leo, it produces the 5th and 8th house, which is also children. So those things become sources of confusion in our life. We're not sure how to do it. We have to put a lot of attention on it. We have to keep going back and looking at it and trying to work hard to make it happen, because it's going backward and our life on earth is going forward. So we have to keep paying attention to it. And having to keep paying attention to it means it's very alive in our consciousness. So to say, is it good or bad, is not a very intelligent way to look at it, as you might expect. As you've probably heard me say 1,000 times, don't look at things as good or bad. Things are more nuanced than that. And with the retrograde planet, it disrupts the things that we want from it. And that disruption alerts us and wakes us up to its essence. Because maybe Jupiter, we're hoping, is going to give us a child. But what does the child really give us? The essence of what the child brings into our life is the real point, not the little body that comes out that we have to pay attention to. So the essence of Jupiter, as shown being like an indicator of children, doesn't go away. But if it makes the child harder to get, then we have to find a more pure relationship with the energy itself. And this is what retrograde planets wind up doing in our consciousness. Like I just explained about Mercury, it's all these things about details, communication, this and that. So when those things screw up, when it goes retrograde, it's to wake you up to, oh yeah, I'm not paying attention to these things. And of course, in the biggest sense, it's how you speak to people in your life. That's one of the biggest things, is how well you speak to others, how well you adjust to others, how curious you really are about what others say, noticing the consequences of your words, noticing how do people really respond to your words and your ability to, accommodate other people's views, and when it's not just what you think. And again, how curious are you really, and how much do you really comprehend and really understand? And how much is that story in your head that you tell yourself about everything? What's that getting you? Is it really true? Are you sure? Are you sure that the explanation about your life or different parts of your life is it really true? Or the things you say about other people? And, we have these ruts and these patterns. And again, you look at someone's natal Mercury to see how elevated that energy is. If someone's Mercury is difficult in their natal chart for whatever reason, the retrograde cycles can be pretty difficult. Again, depending on what it rules, where it's falling, all the nuances of astrology, but it can be difficult because all of the sloppy conversations and your inability to, frankly, literally care about what other people say. You just want to say what you say, and you don't comprehend, or you're not really that interested in other people's ideas. You might think you are, but you're really not. You just want to say what you want to say. You don't listen very well. You don't really adjust to what other people say. You just all about your own ideas. Again, however this goes, Mercury retrograde can really show up, and you see the consequences of that. And by the way, the thing I just mentioned is one of the biggest growth patterns of Mercury retrograde is you're going to notice how well you listen. Again, Mercury going forward, Mercury is about speech, communication. Mercury, as it's moving forward, has a lot to do with my speech, my communication, what I want to say. I have plenty to say, and here I am yapping away about it, right? That's Mercury moving forward, right? But an internal reflective quality of Mercury's not just talking. Communication is not just what you have to say. It's a two-way street. So one of the biggest ways that Mercury retrograde can hurt us personally is we have to bear the consequences of how well we listen. So how well do you listen? This is one of the biggest things that Mercury retrograde really shows us. We get the consequences and the karma and the results of how well we listen. And again, it doesn't always look like we think it might look. And particularly if people have a lot of drama around this idea that nobody ever listens to me, I'm so misunderstood. And, you know, these cycles that we go through, that we tell ourselves this story that nobody ever listens to me, I'm so misunderstood, blah, blah, blah. And we believe all that story. This kind of thing gets really blown up in Mercury retrograde because you're going to feel like nobody listens to me, blah, 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 blah. And maybe, just maybe, you can flip that script a little bit, just flip it around and try it on for a change and just say, I don't listen to anybody. Instead of saying nobody ever listens to me, I'm so misunderstood. What if you just flipped it and played around with the idea that I don't listen to anybody? I misunderstand everybody. I misunderstand everything. Maybe it's not everybody misunderstanding me. Maybe it's me misunderstanding everybody. How is it that everybody misunderstands me? And am I just blowing that out of proportion? Is there any usefulness in ideas like this? Is this really the problem? Is the problem mainly the way I see this and think about it in my head? Is that a bigger problem than what actually even just happened? That somebody said something I didn't like. I wanted something, they didn't agree, or they spoke a way I didn't like. And now I'm in this whole kind of cyclone again about how nobody understands me. And again, all of this is a lot of Mercury being stuck. So Mercury gets stuck a lot in water signs, often. Water signs, that's why, you know, the debilitated sign is Pisces. Doesn't mean if it's in Pisces necessarily that bad. But this is why, because Mercury gets too emotional or too fiery, where we're like irritated, angry, too fast. And again, when Mercury's in fire signs, it can have that kind of very, very quick. Again, not listening enough, not taking in enough information before we already got the answer. You know, like you see me explain in these videos, there's some people that I drive them absolutely bananas when I explain something because they want some short, quick answer. And I wind up explaining it. It takes 10 steps to explain this thing, and they want one step. And they're like, God, will you just get to the point? Well, the point is, if you want to actually comprehend it, you need to listen. It's not one step. And if you're going to think that a process is going to be understood in one step, again, this is Mercury like being too impatient. And what often happens is, this is why when we get into this good and bad, black and white, well, is it good or bad? And then we get frustrated because we have an opinion. So rather than actually comprehending something then, which is Mercury is actually how well we literally comprehend what's going on. If you want to understand this, comprehension is Mercury. Because to comprehend something and really understand it and comprehend it, you need to take in a lot of details. You need to take in a lot of information. You need to not make up your mind until a lot has happened. And even then, you're still open. If you really want to comprehend something, you need to be first interested and curious, in fact, fascinated by whatever it is you're looking at. Not rushing to get an opinion that you can then spout off to everybody. I know this, again, and you don't know anything yet. And then make up our mind too quickly, have some opinion. We don't really know what we're saying yet. Then we string that misunderstood idea with another one and another one. And before you know it, we're so far away from any comprehension or understanding of something, we don't even know how we got there. By the way, this is a lot of what happens with astrology. And people who try to learn a subject like astrology, again, because there's so many details, and they're just trying to get a really quick, well, what is it? And try to get a quick answer to something that takes a lot of time. Again, like I said at the beginning, even at the beginning of this video, it's not like it's even really much harder. You can take the same amount of time that you might in getting sidetracked and distracted to just stay focused. Just stay focused on that thing and put your time into learning one thing with a lot of comprehensive energy. And then actually learn it correctly, rather than have it be one more thing that you barely know, stringed against another thing that you barely know. And then there's just all these things you barely know. again, so I'm just saying these are Mercury themes. And when Mercury goes retrograde, we get the karmas of that, of, you know, on a personal level, again, with speaking, how we speak to others, how we listen. So, you know, again, it's one of those things where in your personal relationships and your personal, excuse me, you know, your personal relationships, it definitely shows up a lot. And in, but also in things that you're trying to learn and ways that you're trying to connect it with culture and with larger themes, as I talked about with Aquarius. And so this is a lot of what's going on and what we're going to be experiencing. And there's some comments here. So there's the 2 nakshatras. Someone did ask, it's a good question. Someone asked about being in Purvabhadra, then back to Shatabishak. So these 2 nakshatras in Aquarius, again, very important. This is a section of Aquarius, of course, again, sidereal zodiac. It's always aligned. This isn't Pisces. This is lined up in, or I'm sorry, it's not, it's not Pisces. This is the first 6 degrees, 40 minutes of Aquarius is Dhanishta. Then from 6:40 to 20 is Shatabishak. Then 20 to early Pisces is Purvabhadra. So the Shatabishak Purvabhadra nexus is where, you know, Shatabishak is that section of Aquarius. And again, you have this air sign, and it's related to the air, the atmosphere that extends up, the upper atmosphere. And the nakshatra Shatabishak literally is ruled by the god Varuna, which is the god of like the upper atmosphere. It said the celestial waters, the ocean of like the, you know, literally like the moisture in the sky. And it's from this place where you see a lot of that sort of kinetic potential, a lot of eccentric energy, and a lot of, like I say, a lot of potential for things like lightning and electricity, and which comes in the next nakshatra. The next nakshatra, Purvabhadra, is ruled by the deity Aja Ekapad, which is related to lightning that comes down and strikes us. It's an inspiring nakshatra. So this section of Aquarius really changes from the structure of Capricorn with Dhanishta nakshatra, then the frenetic and the kinetic sort of and the real mystical metaphysical potential of Shatabishak, which means 100 doctors, where we look for alternative solutions to our life on earth in that nakshatra, to the lightning strike of inspiration that comes down from the heaven in Purvabhadra. And that lightning strike in Purvabhadra leads into Pisces, which then takes us beyond this world even of culture to the world of metaphysics and mysticism, which is how Aquarius becomes Pisces. And so Sean Sullivan, hey, I know you, Sean, said could be interlisting or expressing communicative through intuitive means, metaphysical healing. Yeah, Sean, absolutely. So when we see it, it starts in but I don't see where it's even in Purvabhadra. It's in Shatabishak the whole time. So it's in Shatabishak the whole time. Oh, it goes back into Dhanishta. Okay. So Shatabishak to Dhanishta, not Purvabhadra. So it's mostly in Shatabishak. And yeah, this is very, very powerful for that inner listening. And again, Shatabishak is the 100 doctors, the 100 physicians. It's very good for like mystical, metaphysical healing, metaphysical and mystical solutions to our problems. It literally means 100 doctors where we need to go all over the place to try to find a solution. And that mystical, metaphysical solution, with it being Mercury retrograde, means that we're noticing that we need to develop more skills, listening more to the pulse of the universe, listening more and really connecting with the upper atmosphere and the atmosphere in our consciousness and mind. And by the way, this is also very related to things like mantra. Mantra is one of the most powerful metaphysical healing remedies. Mantra is the big remedy because, people talk about getting pujas and whatnot. Getting a puja, and getting a priest to do a ritual, you're just getting them to say mantras on your behalf and all of that, which is certainly powerful. But the most powerful remedies and solutions are things that you do, where your consciousness and will is engaged. So it'd be a great time for healing mantras. And again, you do them for yourself. You also do them for the world. This is why Shatabishak is very much this nakshatra also of alchemy. All the Vedic rituals that take place in temples all over the world, they're done every day for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of mankind. Who knows what the world would be like if these great pujaris weren't doing pujas every day and saying these mantras and sending it into the upper atmosphere so the god Varuna can maintain the order of the cosmos. So then it goes back into Dhanishta, the last week of the Mercury retrograde. It goes back into Dhanishta, and Dhanishta is much more about wealth, values, and grounding it back in. So I already explained the first nakshatra in Aquarius is Dhanishta, which is where Capricorn and the structure of Capricorn becomes like a kind of social structure in Aquarius, that first section especially. Then we start to elevate that social awareness towards something more cosmic and more metaphysical in Shatabishak. So that's where the retrograde happens, is it goes into Shatabishak, where we're really connected to the higher vibration. Then it goes retrograde back into Dhanishta, where it comes back into like our bones, into our routines and rituals. And then, of course, you see it goes direct and it traces over that space again. So one of the things about retrograde cycles as well is that they cover the same area 3 times. Western astrology has this thing called the shadow, the retrograde shadow, which it's still in that shadow point now, which means Mercury is now covering area that he is going to cover 3 times, which is from he started covering that shadow space like last week or so. Yeah, like around this time, since early February, when he started, he was about here. Mercury hit the point where he's going to go back and forth like 3 different ways. By the way, some of the political stuff that happened, especially with the impeachment and stuff, this was in Western astrology. It's very legitimate to say these things. It's very interesting to say that that Mercury is in his shadow, the shadow section. I haven't researched it enough, but it's an interesting and it's a legitimate thing to ponder. And I think some astrologers have researched that. So Mercury is going to cover that same area 3 times, from early Dhanishta or from Dhanishta through Shatabishak and then back. So that section of the zodiac is going to be, if you have planets there, from about 4 degrees of Aquarius to about 17 or 18. He went up to 1845. Yeah, he turns retrograde 1845. So when it hits 20, that's Purvabhadra. So yeah, that's really powerful. Whoops, let me get the chart back up. Sorry. So yeah, so that's really powerful there. And so this is pretty much what I wanted to say. David said, love your books. I assume you're talking to me. Thank you. So if people have a couple questions, you can ask. Give me a chance again to let people know of the class that I have on retrograde planets. And again, it's a special. It's 6 to 10 hours. It's usually $97, but there's a discount. You can get 30% off. Again, I break down each retrograde planet will disrupt as a karaka, like Venus in relationships, Jupiter and children. The planet as a house ruler. Again, it also disrupts. And that disruption alerts us to something much deeper. As you can see, when planets are retrograde, they're closer to the Earth. So that closeness to the Earth makes the planet very bright in the sky. When you look up and see, especially like Jupiter retrograde, Venus retrograde, which comes later in the year, it's gigantic in the sky. And you're like, wow, what's that? Well, that's what it looks like when it's retrograde, when it's messing up your life, right? According to the Western astrology, as it's messing up your whole life, that's how it looks. It looks beautiful. You walk out and it takes your breath away. You're like, wow, look at that. Mars is retrograde. You're like, wow, look at that. Again, that's what the retrograde planet, how it looks, right? So you can just see even then why it's considered so auspicious. It's like a big shining jewel in the sky. So when you were born, by the way, that this retrograde course is also really good for any retrograde planets you have in your natal chart. Pretty much everybody has some retrograde planets in their chart. Saturn's retrograde. Saturn and Jupiter are retrograde close to a half or a third of the time. Mercury's retrograde, especially, if you're looking at outer planets as well. But to really understand the principle and concept behind the retrograde planets, I put this together. So, definitely check that out. Let me put the link there again. I just put the link in the description again. So, if that serves you, then you can check that out. I talk about these things because people often ask me, well, where can I get a course? Where can I do that? So now I've just started to just show up and have some links if people are interested. This is nice. Malik said Steve Jobs had Sun in Shatabishak and was so good at gathering different things and connecting them and bringing them together. Shatabishak is very much a nakshatra of alchemy, of especially intellectual alchemy, taking parts from different, especially different ideas and different modalities and combining them. So Mercury really, this is why Mercury is very powerful in Shatabishak, also just in Aquarius, because again, they're the same section of sky. Aquarius is an air sign. Mercury also rules an air planet. And so in these nakshatras also support, for the most part, this airy quality, especially Shatabishak, because it's the one that's totally in Aquarius. Whereas the first nakshatra is half in Capricorn, half in Aquarius. The last one is mostly in Aquarius, but then the last pada is in Pisces. But there's always a continuity here. And again, this is right out of the tradition of Indian astrology. Again, once they align the zodiac, Ashwini and Aries at the beginning, it lines everything else up. So these are fixed portions of the sky. And, it's not surprising that, I've seen a lot of people, particularly Mercury and Venus, of course, Saturn as well. They all do really well in Aquarius. But again, Shatabishak it's also really good for writing, for mantra, for all kinds of healing. And again, I say healing as especially with Mercury and mantra, because mantra is one of the main ways that Mercury heals. It heals through the power of sound, but also the power of the intelligence, to intellect, to understand things. You know, it's the first act of healing is comprehension, is understanding. I mean, real healing. Look, as long as we're stuck in all these wrong explanations about what we're doing and who we are, which a lot of it is a Mercury problem, like I said earlier, just all these bad interpretations in our head where we're still just telling ourselves all these wrong stories. As long as we're there, we're not going anywhere. We're not moving. We're not going to budge an inch from that. As long as we're buying into all that, we're not changing at all, because we're convinced it's all this stuff that I believe already in my mind. And so again, Mercury first is very important in flipping that story. But one of the ways is to purify the mind and really connect and elevate the mind and the intellect. And one of the ways to do that is mantra. That's the real spiritual practice with Mercury, is mantra. It elevates the vibration in the mind, and that helps just naturally to unravel the really helps to unravel the the part of the mind that is stuck in all of the triggering and the wrong thinking. And so Maggie says, please tell us an Amma story. Okay, I have an Amma story. Let me take a drink. It's one of my favorite ones, actually. I'll try not to cry. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. I usually tell the story about Shravana nakshatra, but it's also very much related to Mercury and speech and intelligence and humor and flexibility and listening. So there are two situations I often tell the story. One is through Shravana, which is listening, and the other one is the nakshatra of Anuradha, which is God as a divine friend. God as a divine friend. Because this shows something that happened with Amma when she told this story. One of the devotees told the story, and it chokes me up, but I'll get through it. It was a very simple story, and for some reason it really affected me because it sums up a lot of my relationship with Amma as well. Because Amma is she's a divine being. She's a universal being, and some people, she's called Mother. You can approach her as God, as Kali, as all of these big things that are very intimidating. And it could be very intimidating to be around Amma because, again, at first you don't really know what to do. Like, I'm in front of God or this really powerful being, and it's Kali and it's Ma and it's all this stuff that's it can be so big, right? But yet Amma herself, when you're around her, very simple, very fun and flexible and laughing. And my relationship with Amma has always been like that. It's been very easy. It's been very much like a friend, like a divine friend. And a devotee told a story of a situation where Amma was visiting. She went to visit a family that had, they were on a tour, and they had two young girls. And, when Amma arrived, the mother and the father, Amma was coming to their house. So they're like, my God, let's get ready. And they have this altar ready. They have this, their altar room is ready, and it was like a shrine and all this stuff. So Amma comes in and they touch the feet, and they had these two little girls, and Amma just kind of looked at all that. And then Amma just walked right into the room of the little girls. She just walked past all of that and walked right into the room of the two little girls. One of the girls was like 11 or 12, and she really loved Amma very much. She was old enough to really understand who Amma is, at least she's God. She was old enough to kind of get who Amma was, and she had a lot of devotion to Amma. The other girl was much younger. She was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and she just didn't really understand what it was, really, what the fuss was about, particularly in relation to her older sister. And so Amma was in there with the two girls, And the 12-year-old girl was just so devoted and whatnot, and so happy and hugging and smiling. And the other girl wasn't. She was just kind of sitting there like not very happy. She was just kind of sad. And Amma said, "What's wrong? Why, is there something wrong?" And she said to Amma, she said, "How come I don't like your music as much as my sister?" Something like that, something very simple. Because her sister used to play all Amma's CDs all the time, and she would listen and she would be all devoted. And the little girl was like pouting, and she said, "How come I don't like your music as much as my sister?" Again, it's a very strange thing to say, right? And the devotees were watching this. And Amma looked at the little girl and said, "But we're friends, right?" She looked at her and said, "But we're friends, right?" And the little girl went, "Yeah, we're friends." And Amma said, "Okay." And then the little girl jumped in Amma's arms, and Amma just started hugging her. And what it showed was Amma hearing what the little girl was really saying, which is, "Why does my sister love you so much? And I don't get this. What's going on here? I don't understand. And I feel bad because I'm supposed to, what's happening?" But Amma knows the little girl, she loves her friends. She's like, "But we're friends, right?" And the little girl goes, "Yeah, we're friends." And she jumps in Amma's arms, and Amma starts laughing. And then the little girl was fine. But it's this, it's this remarkable ability to hear the truth, to hear what someone is saying. And, Amma didn't need to get into some lecture about anything. She just heard what the little girl was saying. I mean, Amma is she's a Mahatma, so it's hard for us to do something like that. We're not going to know what to say, really. We'll get into some conversation and it doesn't really work. But Amma got right at it. "But we're friends, right?" "Yeah, we're friends." Okay. And that's the link, and that's what the guru does. They connect with you where you are. And eventually, as the little girl develops, she'll understand more what all the rest of it is. But it's just such a beautiful story. And in many ways, it's kind of like what my connection is with Amma on some level, very much, because, some of us have very weird stories with our mother and our past and God, and can be so, who knows. But on a very simple level, Amma is just a fun, beautiful being that, like, when I get around her, it's just fun. I laugh, and it's this whole kind of friend, like God as a divine friend. This is why I also talk about it in relation to the nakshatra of Anuradha. So it's about Shravana, which is listening and really hearing what's being said, and also the god Mitra, which is God as the divine friend, the divine friend. And the divine friend is the God that, think of what a friend is, like a real friend. It's not your lover. It's not your mother. There's no hierarchy. It's your friend that you could tell anything to, and your friend would do anything for you. They don't judge you. They don't want anything from you. They just hang out because they like you. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's a friend, and they're a friend for life. And you can tell your friend anything. Think of the worst thing you've ever done, and the one person you could maybe tell that wouldn't judge you, that wouldn't leave you, that wouldn't go, "Man, that's it. I can't handle this. You're a lunatic." So this God as the divine friend is also when I often tell this story, because, it's a very beautiful energy. And this is also the relationship between Krishna and Radha, more so than lovers and passion. It was this God as divine friend, which is the quality of Anuradha nakshatra. It's just ruled by Mitra, God as the divine friend. So this is when I often tell this story, but it's one of the most beautiful stories. I think also because it touches me, because at the time I heard the story, my relationship with Amma had already changed, and I was feeling it, but it really summed up so much specific what the difference is between these great Mahatmas, these great gurus, and everyone else. Because again, you can tell that it's a great Mahatma and a great guru because they are constantly meeting you where you are rather than you having to meet them where they are. You see other gurus and they're like, do this, do that, do this, do that. And to be around them, you have to do all kinds of stuff to meet them where they are. With Amma, she meets you where you are. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are or even what you say. She knows exactly where you are. Even if you're in the room with your 12-year-old sister who is devoted and you're just kind of sulking a little bit and you say, how come I don't like your music as much as my sister? And Amma knows exactly what that means. But we're friends, right? Yeah, we're friends. And then she jumps in Amma's arms and everything is beautiful because then you're also hugging Amma, who is the little girl wanted to connect with Amma. She wants to also because Amma's this beautiful being. It's not like the little girl didn't like her. She just couldn't make the connection. And again, in many ways, that's what all of us are around Amma on some level. And that's why it really hit me because it's like, that's the way all of us are. We see this beautiful being and we're somewhere else, man. We're in something else. We're just somewhere else. But the little girl, again, because the little girl's heart was also very innocent. So as soon as Amma said it, like if Amma were to say that to me, if Amma were to say, yeah, but we're friends, I wouldn't go, yeah, we're friends. And I wouldn't have the mental innocence to just then be completely open like the little girl was. So it's such a beautiful metaphor of how the Mahatma, how the guru in the simplest, every moment is some kind of like remarkable situation that unfolds. So when this devotee told that story, it's always been maybe my favorite story. Like when I dream about Amma, I don't dream that it's this big thing. It's her and I hanging out. Like I could have a dream that Amma and I are sitting on the couch and we're just laughing and talking, and I still know it's Amma. But and we're just having fun. It's like my friend. I have those dreams like that also, like even about Shiva and the other deities. I don't know, maybe I have a big ego or something, but it's like they're my friends. It's not like they're, oh God, or Ma, or whatever. It's not like I'm intimidated or scared, or it's not the worship part. It's the joy. It's the divine friend. So I think it's also a very rich kind of metaphor for the Mercury energy, because it's very mercurial. And I know that's why that story and that relationship with Amma connects with me, because I have so much Mercury. The reason I've been able to get along in life and to get anything in life or understand anything is because of the Mercury, because of the fun, the playfulness. When I get around Amma, I just start laughing. It's not heavy at all. It's never been. It's always been very light. Not light in an airy way, but light as in just the divine laughter, that rapture, that just joy, that overflowing love and joy and happiness. And you see that with these divine beings. You see all of the deities, even all the pictures, they're always like smiling, and you never see them serious and all like that. It's one of the biggest, most profound teachings, I think, of life, is that we need to not take everything so seriously. We're so serious. We need to be light. And Mercury, this, back to the point here of the Mercury retrograde here. I got off a little bit, but someone asked me to tell an Amma story, so I don't mind. It's profound, yes. To connect to you where you are. Yep, that's what these divine beings do. So anyway, it's got a little longer than I thought, but that's fine. I'm always glad to share a story about Amma. It's one of my favorites. God is a divine friend, right? So that's a lot of Mercury too, because Mercury shows that intelligence, that humor, that fun, that curiosity. Think of how you are with your friends, and think of how different you are with your friends than you are with your lovers or your family members or people where it's suddenly so serious. We're so serious. Well, you're my partner. That means, well, you're supposed to blah, blah, blah. Or you're my mother. You're supposed to this. You're my father. Look at what you did. And we hold other people to these standards. And then think of how you are with your friend. You forgive. You're much more forgiving. You're much more lighthearted, tolerant, relaxed. You're not, you don't pressure them so much. Again, if you treated your friends the way you treated your, family, maybe at times, especially now, maybe you do more for your family or whatever. It's not a judgment, but just noticing that energy and how beautiful it is. So anyway, folks, I'm going to end it there. And I'm glad you enjoyed the Amma story. And I hope you all have a good night and share this with others. Subscribe, get notified, like the video and all if you want. So we'll take it from there. And I hope you guys